Hello, I'm Kirsty Young, and this is a podcast from the Desert Island Discs archive. For rights reasons, we've had to shorten the music. The programme was originally broadcast in 1976, and the presenter was Roy Plumley.
This week, our castaway is the American novelist and travel writer Paul Theroux. Well, any more trips like your last one, the one to Tokyo, which produced the Great Railway Bazaar, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if you did finish as a castaway. Have you ever daydreamed about being a Robinson Crusoe?
I've daydreamed about it, and I've even had a bash at being Robinson Crusoe. There's an island off the coast of Kenya called Lamu. This is very romantic sounding, but it's a terrible place to be if you were like me, I think.
Well, it really wasn't a deserted island by any means.
No.
How much does music mean in your life?
Well, a certain amount. I will say that while I enjoy music, I'm a fairly ignorant music lover. But I find it's incompatible with most of the things I do, such as reading and writing. I can't read or write with the radio going or with music going.
What was your plan in choosing your 8 records?
I think nostalgia, really. It just songs that I've heard and happen to like. But I don't associate them with anything except a particular period in my life.
Mm-hmm. Where do we start?
I think start when I was about 8 years old, and I used to listen to the radio very, very late at night. I'm from Massachusetts. And the only station that was on the radio was WWVA in Wheeling, West Virginia. And I used to listen to Earl Scruggs and Lester Flatt playing banjo music.
Banjo music by Earl Scruggs and Lester Flatt, Shucking the Corn. Let's go straight on to your second record.
Well, the second one I associate with being at university, and really the discovery of poetry and reading, and that the kind of pleasure that poetry gives. And it's E. E. Cummings reading What If a Much of a Witch of a Wind.
What if a much of a witch of a wind gives the truth to summer's lie? Bloodies with dizzying leaves the sun, and yanks immortal stars awry. Blow king to beggar and queen to seam, blow friend to fiend, blow space to time. When skies are hanged and oceans drowned, the single secret will still be man.
E. E. Cummings reading his own poem, What If a Much of a Witch of a Wind. Now, you come from Massachusetts of French stock, yes?
Yes, my father is French-Canadian. My mother is Italian.
As a youngster, what did you want to be?
I wanted to be a doctor, actually, or a kind of medical missionary. I saw myself going to distant places and doing good.
You did, in fact, start to read medicine?
Yes, I was a medical student for about 4 years, but gave it up. Because in the States, one is discouraged. You know, American doctors don't operate on you unless you've swallowed a lot of money. Then they remove it in a major operation.
Yes.
But it was also more positive than that I really wanted to be a writer, and I saw writing as incompatible with being a doctor. So with a certain amount of reluctance, I gave up being a doctor.
So you switched to reading English with a view to writing. What happened after graduation day?
Well, this was in 1962. I thought I was going to be drafted into the army. And so I decided that I would go as far away as possible, not to hide, but maybe an alternative occupation, you see. So I decided on Central Africa, went there, and even got letters from my draft board saying, report for your physical in Boston, on Friday. I'd write back saying, owing to the spring rains, your letter only just arrived. I can't be in Boston. But
where were you?
I was in Nyasaland, actually,
Yes.
which later became Malawi,
Doing what?
teaching. And then shortly after I arrived, they had what for them was a revolution, was not a revolution at all. It was just a little bit of spot of trouble in the capital. But a lot of people were deported, and some people were persecuted. The upshot of it was that I was kicked upstairs, and I was made headmaster of a school, and I eventually ended up on the inspectorate. But in Africa, you see, everyone did much better, moved much higher.
There's a story that you were eventually thrown out because you were accused of conspiring to assassinate the president.
Yes, unfortunately. It's not a true story. It was a misunderstanding, a frame-up. It would take much too long to tell. It's an interesting story, if I may write it.
Where did you move on to?
I was, in fact, deported from Malawi in 1965. I joined the rest of the Malawi refugees in Uganda. All of them had got very fat jobs there, and they offered me quite a good job as a lecturer at the university, where I stayed for 4 fairly happy years.
You met your English wife there. What was she doing in Uganda?
She was studying and also teaching.
And you also published, while you were there, your first novel, Waldo. What was that about?
It's set in America, Waldo. It's not a book that I'm very happy with, but it was my first book. I feel a certain kind of affection for it, but I don't think that it was a huge, if I can use the word, artistic success. But I moved on to other things.
Yes.
I found that my style was changing much too rapidly, and eventually arrived at a point where I could see what I was writing. I didn't really know what I was writing at that point.
The second book, a comic novel about the East African nations, Thong and the Indians.
Yes, it came out in 1968 and is appearing really for the first time in England this year. Well, that was written at a time when not many people outside Uganda knew that there were Indians in Uganda, and really they were the backbone of the economy, and I think the salt of the earth there. But they ran into a certain amount of opposition. They were criticized, eventually persecuted, and finally thrown out. A very unfortunate thing.
Yes. And then it was time to move on again.
Yes, at that point I needed another job. I had resigned over a fracas at the... they were there having a demonstration. They burnt my car, the students, that was.
Your own students?
Well, yes. I don't know whether they recognized me. Maybe we all look alike to them, I don't know. But they were very troublesome, actually. And then I also felt that it was time to move. I began to see great discrepancies between what I was teaching and what I was seeing happen. I didn't feel that my work was getting me anywhere there, so I went to Singapore and
Yes.
taught there.
What did you teach this time?
Well, I had to come up with a field, really. The job going was a lecturer in 17th century drama, and I mugged that up and taught that for the next 3 years.
You had been teaching the 20th century novel, I gather, at Uganda.
That might have been the name of the course, but in fact we were teaching a few short stories and hoping for the best.
Yes. Right. Now, several novels about Africa. Girls at Play, Jungle Lovers. One set in the United States. What was that called?
There's one called Murder in Mount Holly, is that the one?
Yes, yes. And one about Singapore.
Yes, St. Jack is set in Singapore. Another one I wrote in Singapore. I was generally one country behind. So one of the African novels I wrote in Singapore, and the Singapore novel, I wrote in England.
Yes. And then you decided to come and live in England. You had been travelling for what, 7 or 8 years?
Yes. Yes, and by then the danger of my being drafted had passed. It had passed at a time when I think I would have joined the army. I went to Africa, a conscientious objector, and emerged, well, not exactly a hawk, but I'm not, I wouldn't describe myself as a pacifist now.
Mm-hmm. Record number 3.
Well, that is really a record that I associate with Singapore and India, and it's the sound of the bazaar, the song from the Indian film, sung by one of the most popular Indian singers, Asha Bhosle. It's this kind of song I associate with dust and a hot day.
The voice of Asher Bosley. You've been living in London now for, what, 4 years? Your wife works for the BBC, doesn't she?
Yes, she's at Bush House, English by radio. She's a producer.
And you've written 2 novels with an English setting.
Yes, one of which appeared a few years ago, and the other which is appearing now. The first one, The Black House, is set in Dorset, where we went to live after we left Singapore. It was pure chance that we chose Dorset, but it turned out to be a very, very interesting place, a much more interesting place than a lot of than Uganda, for example, or Singapore. A very subtle, interesting place near Marshwood Vale. And then moved to London. And that's the setting, actually, for the other English novel that I wrote, The Family Arsenal.
Now that you're writing full-time, no lectures to worry about, what sort of discipline do you hold yourself to?
I try to write every day and keep at it. In fact, I think sometimes that a writer's life is nothing. It's just a very desk-bound occupation. When it's going well, that's a marvellous feeling. If I'm not writing, I feel very fretful and feel like travelling, in fact.
What are you working on now?
I'm working on a film script, in fact, at the moment, but I would like to write a novel, because with a novel you don't quite know what's coming next. You have an idea, but there's a kind of discovery every day.
Yes, you don't set out a pretty complex framework before you start. You get a situation and go from there.
Yes, if you knew where you were going, that would take most of the fun out of it. I mean, the pleasure of writing is like the pleasure of travel, of sort of open-ended travel. You don't quite know where you're going or what's going to happen when you get there, but you're going in a general direction. And with writing a novel, you have to have a direction.
You have a brother who's a writer too.
Yes, I have 4 brothers, one of whom is a writer, and he's also a university lecturer in the States at Harvard.
Do you compete at all?
Oh, no. I would say one of the values of writing is that there's no competition. You have no opponent, no enemies, no competition whatsoever. That's certainly the pleasure of writing. It's absolutely fair and completely uncompetitive. It's not like a business at all, really. Only publishers sometimes think that, but it's not true.
Let's have record number 4.
Record number 4 is a Mozart quintet, which I think is an extremely pleasant noise.
The opening of the Mozart Quintet in A major for clarinet and strings, Gervais de Paya with members of the Milos Ensemble. Now, your very successful travel book, The Great Railway Bazaar, you set off from Victoria Station one afternoon to go to Tokyo by train. Whose idea was that?
Mine. I had been travelling on railways in Indonesia, Burma, and Thailand when I was living in Singapore, and it just struck me as something that was both possible and pleasant to do. It was a most attractive prospect, very exciting weather, very exciting trains, simple. You sit down, you lie down, you sleep, you write, look out the window. I couldn't think of a better way of getting to Tokyo.
What route did you choose, roughly?
I looked at a map, and wherever I saw a black line indicating a railway, tried to connect them up between Victoria and Tokyo Central. There are a few gaps. There are no trains in Afghanistan. In Baluchistan, in southeast Iran, there's the desert, and there's a war going on, and there's also no railway. But the rest of Asia is quite well connected with railways.
When you ran out of rails, you had to fly.
I took a bus first, then I found buses were making me ill, and I flew. But there wasn't really a lot of flying or buses. It was mainly railways.
And back by another route?
I came back by going to Vladivostok, and then actually Nakhodka, and taking the Trans-Siberian to Moscow, and then coming back. You know, you can go down to Liverpool Street Station and get to Tokyo that way without a great deal of trouble.
You avoided going into China?
Yes, I couldn't get a visa. I tried, but failed. Sometime I would like to do that, because that's also a very agreeable route. You would go through Mongolia.
You started by taking the Orient Express to Istanbul. From what you write, this is a pretty crummy train.
Yes, there's no dining car on it. I would warn anyone that plans to take it that there's no dining car. It takes you to a part of the world where the railway is a marvellous and extremely comfortable institution. After Istanbul, which is really the gateway to Asia, you're on Turkish trains. They do have dining cars and excellent sleeping arrangements. And you can really be horizontal and get all the way to Tehran or Meshed at the top of Iran.
Where
Quite
were the
easily.
railways worst?
The worst railways, you can't blame them really, were in Vietnam. They were pretty tragic. Although the scenery was, I must say, absolutely splendid. There are bad trains in India, but there are also very good ones. I think there was one that stopped 96 times in about 12 hours. It seemed to be stopping about every 5 or 10 minutes.
You did travel first class as far as possible.
Yes, because I found that I could only write in first class, and if I was on a train for 2 or 3 days, it was really like being in a hotel, and I could scribble away or read. And if I had gone third class, when I did go third class, I found I could do anything. I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I couldn't sleep, and I was getting indigestion.
What did you read on the trip?
I brought Dickens, I read Little Dorrit, I read Gissing, I read Browning's poetry, short stories. Short stories are excellent for us, particularly Chekhov's, where they're set in a railway compartment. I found really that was paradise, putting my feet up, having a drink, having my pipe drawing nicely, looking out the window and reading, and 2 or 3 days later ending in Madras or Rangoon.
How long did the trip take you?
It took about 4 months, just under.
Would you recommend anyone else to do it?
The moral of my book might be, don't do it. I would go anywhere on a train. I would recommend practically any part of the trip that I took to a traveller. But doing it all in one gulp, no, I would say. You get withdrawal symptoms toward the end.
Let's have your fifth record. What's that?
Well, the fifth record is associated with train travel. It's Alabama Bound by the immortal Fletcher Henderson.
Fletcher Henderson and his band, Alabama Bound. Record number 6 now. Let's go straight for it.
Record number 6 is one that I associate with one of the pleasantest activities I can think of, which is lying on your back in a grassy park, Greenwich Park, Hyde Park, and listening to a band concert, and that would be the Washington Post March.
The Washington Post March by the Regimental Band of Her Majesty's Coldstream Guards. In a practical sense, what kind of castaway would you be? Are you good with your hands?
Not bad, I would say. I think I could manage.
You told me that you did rather well in the Boy Scouts when you were...
Oh yes, I
youngster.
was a Boy Scout. In fact, I would think that you could probably earn all your merit badges on a desert island. I don't know who would give you the examination, but I think I would survive. The prospect of being on a desert island I find quite attractive, actually.
What about escaping? Would you try to do that?
I doubt it.
record number 7?
Record number 7 is an African song, Malaika, which means I love you, my angel. But it's a nice one. It was very popular in Africa when I was there.
Malaika, nakupenda malaika. Malaika, nakupenda malaika. Nami nifanyeje, kijana mwenzio. Nashindwa na mali sina we, ningekuoa malaika.
The Swahili song Malaika, Fadili William. And that brings you to your last record. What's that?
Last record is the Bach Cantata number 170, sung by Alfred Deller. I think it's the singer as much as the song that attracts me.
The first aria from Bach's Cantata number 170 for Theroux, sung by Alfred Deller. If you could take just one disc out of your 8, which would it be?
I think that one, the Bach.
And you're allowed to take one luxury with you to the island.
Yes, that's difficult. I think something to drink, the largest amount of champagne that you could give me.
And one book apart from the Bible, Shakespeare, and big encyclopedias.
Yes, could you provide perhaps an anthology of English poetry from, I don't know, 1400 to the present, the largest one you could offer? I found myself that I ran out of novels, and you ration yourself with novels, but with poetry you can return to it again and again.
All right. And thank you, Paul Theroux, for letting us hear your Desert Island discs.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye, everyone.
You've been listening to a podcast from the Desert Island Discs archive. For more podcasts, please visit bbc.co.uk/Radio4.